Hello and welcome to another episode of Verbal Commitment here on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flynn. I'm Kevin Flaherty? No, I'm Ryan Wallace. And as you can tell, for those of you that have joined us before, a little bit different show this time. Again, for those of you that tuned in last week, you know that my colleague, my partner in crime, the co-creator of this show, Kevin Flaherty, signed off for a final time last week for Verbal Commitment. He's on to bigger, brighter, better things. Maybe those things are shared by the time this episode comes to light. Maybe not. But either way, I know I speak for myself, producer Nick Springer, and everybody at KCSN, wishing Kevin all the best. And with that said, as far as where we go from here, to pull kind of a Wolf of Wall Street line, the show goes on. And for now, it'll be myself solo. Maybe we look into some other co-hosts down the line. We're just going to feel it out. It's a feeling out process for right now. But for the time being, it will be myself. And for the most part, the show will carry on much the same as our usual listeners have become accustomed to. But I'm going to try and kind of condense myself down and try and keep things more on topic and help you guys be able to find different segments a little bit quicker by really leaning into the football frame of mind. And we're going to have things that we call first down, second down, third down, and fourth down, and it'll be the same week to week. So first down, that's where you're going to find our news and notes, our commitment alerts, where the siren goes off. That'll be in first down. We'll lead off the show with that each and every week. For second down, that's where you're going to find our prospect profiles segments in the off season. As we get into the during the season in the fall, that'll be maybe our game breakdowns and talking about different games that I will have hit up the week before and talk about the players that I saw, maybe our players of the week. All those things will happen in second down. In third down, that is for now where our interview segment will live. And so we'll have players on, coaches on, fellow colleagues in the industry, perhaps. So third down is where the chunk of our show will live with interviews and our guests. And then fourth down, for now in the off season, that'll kind of be our timeout section where maybe I get to vent, rant, rave. Again, folks that have been around the show know that I can kind of go on a tangent. I'm good at that. Maybe we'll have some mailbag kind of Q&A segments that can live in fourth down, or perhaps when we get into the season, that can be where our previews for the week ahead will live, and I can kind of get into where I'm headed, players I'm looking forward to seeing in the weeks ahead, and so on and so forth. So again, maybe that'll keep me more on track. Nobody wants to listen to just me for an hour. I mean, hell, my wife married me, and I don't think she wants to sign up for that. I know she doesn't want to sign up for that. I know you guys don't either. So that is how we're going to get started and get into this kind of next wave of Verbal Commitment as the brand carries on. For those of you that are tuning in maybe for the first time, just want to welcome you to the podcast that is committed to covering high school football recruiting across Kansas, throughout the Kansas City metro. From the Greenbacks to the Spoof Hounds, Thunderbirds, Firebirds, Hawklets, Roosters. We'll touch them all in the name of elevating and publicizing our area's growing football talent, whether they're going to become Wildcats, Jayhawks, Tigers, maybe Ichabods, Ravens, Blue Dragons, you name it. If it's going to touch on recruiting, we're going to hit it. And so with all that being said, you came for local football flavor. You want local football flavor. Let's huddle up and start the show with first down. And we're getting it started off with a commitment alert here. And it comes from our friends in Columbia, the Missouri Tigers, actually not done in this class just yet because they're hitting the transfer portal. Yes, there are still players that were in the transfer portal looking for homes, and Missouri found two pretty good ones that make sense. We lead things off with this duo with Kamari and Morgan. He's a 6'5", 250-pound outside linebacker that comes to the Tigers from Baylor, former four-star recruit turned four-star transfer. By many in the industry, he was considered probably the top available defensive lineman that was still left for the taking. Committed to Virginia Tech, but it sounds like there might have been an academic hiccup there that ends up kind of preventing him from landing in the ACC. Auburn and Mississippi State tried to get involved there as well, but it ends up being Missouri that lands Morgan. 125 snaps over 10 games as a stand-up edge in Waco last year as a true freshman. This will be his fourth school in 4 years. So he was at Red Oak in Texas, then South Oak Cliff, that's become kind of a powerhouse down in the Dallas area, Baylor, and now Missouri. But man, he really fits the mold of what the Tigers like up front. And then alongside him, also this week, Mark Hensley, Northern Illinois product transfer, comes over from the MAC, 6'3", 290, an interior player. Actually played his high school ball about an hour and a half from Como at Washington High. So southeast, just south of the river there. 566 snaps last season, 12 pressures, 20 stops, and 30 tackles, according to Pro Football Focus. So a guy that I think maybe gives them some flexibility along the inside. And again, a guy that, we talk about it all the time when you think about transfers, a guy that's going to be excited to wear the black and gold. So two big transfer pickups for the Tigers. Sticking in first down, we've got one more piece of news that we wanted to share, and it comes from the consensus number one player in Kansas, according to On3 and 24/7 Sports. He's number 3 here at KCSN for the class of 2027, and it's Cooper Omott. He is locking in some official visits with the two in-state powers, KU and K-State, are official on this calendar for Cooper Omott, the 6-foot, 190-pound athlete. He kind of does it all for Great Bend, right? We saw Ian Premer do a little bit of that last year for Great Bend on both sides of the ball. Cooper Omott, a receiver, but an emerging defender, and that's kind of the area that we like to talk about him and project him here at Verbal Commitment, is as a safety. I already mentioned he's the number one player in Kansas, according to On3 and 24/7 Sports. He is scheduled to lock in an official visit with KU on June 5th through the 7th. And then he will wrap things up the month of June anyway. K-State, June 19th through the 21st. We'll see if he ends up being joined at K-State with Gus Corsair. I think that was the date that was being thrown around for the Hayes High product as well. But again, June 5th through the 7th for Cooper Omott in Lawrence, June 19th through the 21st for K-State for Cooper Omott. And again, he's a busy man right now in the spring. Wisconsin, he was up in Madison last week. Vandy and Penn State are hosting him unofficially this week for some practice visits. And then he'll see Iowa next month for another practice visit. Could squeeze in, a couple other practice visits. I know maybe Minnesota is one that I think he'd like to see. Iowa State, maybe KU and K-State get some spring practice visits from him as well ahead of the official visits that they've now locked in for the month of June. And quickly finishing some things up here with Cooper, he's probably the one right now that I think KU and K-State fans are tracking the closest when it comes to the 2027 class, because, Gus Corsair, we've talked about it on the show before, and it's kind of been tossed out there quite frequently of late in terms of kind of crystal ball and some buzz burning for Oklahoma with him. I think when it comes to Cooper Omott, though, again, Fawn and Steele heading to Texas Tech. Some of the top players coming off the board, Tyson Ross, our number one here at KCSN, off to Oklahoma. So that kind of leaves Gus Corsair and Cooper Omott. And again, I already mentioned Corsair might be leaning other directions. So leaves Cooper Omott kind of as the big prize for KU and K-State to fight over. And again, if you're asking me to project things right here, right now, and again, Cooper's kind of a quiet kid, taking things in Great Bend at his own pace. I think if he wants to stay close to home right now, I would trend and lean K-State's direction. I think Jordan Peterson, Jeremiah Johnson, that defensive back group coming with a lot of energy. I think that's kind of compelled them to pick up the pace a little bit quicker, maybe with Cooper Omott than with maybe some other in-staters. So I like where K-State sits right now. KU still in the mix. If he does choose to go outside the state lines, though, my money right now would be on Penn State, simply because, remember, Matt Campbell's staff at Iowa State got involved with Ian Premer pretty early, and therefore they have been on the scene with Cooper Omott for quite a while as well. Obviously, Cooper wants to get out and see Penn State himself and see if maybe he gets that feeling. So that is my 2 cents on it from, again, kind of 1,000-foot view from where I see things here in Kansas City. Again, things can change on a dime here, but as we sit here late March, if he wants to stay closer to home, I would lean more K-State. If he wants to head a little bit further from home, I think the advantage right now would lean with Penn State. That being said, let's move to second down, and that means for right now it's our prospect profile. And it's funny, I ended up choosing a player that ends up transitioning well off of the Cooper Omot discussion, because I look at a kid like Ethan Curry out at Lawrence, a chesty lion, as maybe a Cooper Omot light. 561 total offensive yards last year at Lawrence, 196 more as a return man, 60 tackles on defense, 2 tackles for loss, 5 PBUs, and an interception in only playing 7 games on defense. And look, when you slap on the tape of Ethan Curry, you start to see a really fluid athlete. And again, I pulled a bunch of defensive clips here because that's where I see him projecting the best. I think he's got great body control with or without the ball and elite footwork. Would I like to see him maybe use less of the hand tackles and some of those olays, if you want to call them that, maybe more body contact? Sure, but I also wouldn't say that he's one that shies away from physicality either. I just love the makeup athletically of an Ethan Curry. Again, similar to a Cooper Omot, maybe not that elite level in terms of how he tests, but also maybe not that far away from it either. When you look at Ethan Curry, you're looking at a player and a prospect that's already benching over 400 pounds and cleaning almost 300. He's at 295 pounds again at 5'10", 180. Then you think about the burst that he brings with the speed and likely to eclipse 40 inches when in his vertical testing by offseason's end. I was talking with Joseph Potts just this week, top speed, where Ethan Curry trains. He's already approaching 38 inches in his vertical leap as we speak. So this is, again, a dynamic player, explosive, very bursty, and honestly, a guy that I liken a lot to another former Lawrence player at Lawrence Free State, Bryce Tornaden. I get Bryce Tornaden vibes big time from Ethan Curry. Bryce was maybe a little bit more of a missile and I would classify maybe Ethan more as kind of a drone in terms of kind of how they assess things in the defensive backfield and how they approach things. But again, I just love the ball skills. Clint Bowen, former Lawrence High head coach, now at Northern Alabama, just presented Ethan with his first Division I offer this week from the FCS level. So I feel like maybe that's the domino that's going to fall. A lot of other FCS teams in the mix here for Ethan Curry. Will not surprise me if he goes and tears up some camps in the summer circuit, tests really well, and maybe ends up getting some more FCS flyers. And in turn, maybe that parlays into a big senior year where some FBS programs begin kind of keeping a closer watch, potentially even some local Power 4 flavor from a walk-on program, perhaps, or from a walk-on ticket, perhaps, for Ethan Curry. We'll see how it all shakes out. But again, maybe a kid that's a Cooper Omot light in this 2027 class that I think coaches will like from the Lawrence High Chesty Lions, and a multi-sport athlete at that. And with that, I want to transition into a break. But first, reminder, stick around. On the other half of the break, we're welcoming in Caleb Green will join us as our guest interview as we hit third down with the Lee Summit North product, who just walked away with some MVP honors in St. Louis.
I'm BJ Kissel, founder and CEO of KC Sports Network. Emprise Bank has been with us from the beginning. They were our first network partner, and they believed in the vision of what we were building from the start. I can't speak to any other banks or companies and how they operate, but I can tell you from personal experience and based on the growth of the network you're listening to right now, that if you have banking needs, call our friends at Emprise Bank. We've worked with so many great people there over the years, from Vicky and Aggie to Andrea, Lori, Jackie, Deb, and Aaron, and not to mention so many others that not just supported KC Sports Network, but supported our KCSN Foundation as well. But the best thing that I know is that if I have a question or a problem, no matter how dumb the question is, I know who I'm going to call and who I'm going to talk to. And I know that I'm getting an answer from someone that I can trust. And I know that person is there to help us. That's why Emprise Bank has always been and continues to be our partner in Possible. And they can be yours too. You just have to reach out. If you have a banking need, whether it's business or personal, hit me up. I will connect you directly with the same people that have helped us build KCSN. And that's our friends at Emprise Bank.
And welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Ryan Wallace, and I am pleased to be joined by this week's guest of the week, Caleb Green from Lee Summit North. Caleb, thanks for joining me.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
No doubt. I first off, I kind of teased it in the right before the break that you're coming off MVP honors in St. Louis at the Under Armour Next Combine Series. A huge moment, I would have to imagine. Was We just talked about it off air, but like, was your goal all along to be the MVP? And at what point in the day did you start to kind of catch on? Like, man, I'm having a pretty special performance here.
So my goal coming into it was just like I just wanted to prove to myself that I can compete with some of the best guys around and some of the best guys in the area. But getting MVP, that was big for me, and I was very appreciative. I realized during when we were starting doing bag drills that I'm doing really well, and I can be show that I'm one of the best guys here.
It has that MVP nod like earned you some new text messages or, any college coaches like congratulating you and stuff since you got back to Kansas City?
I actually have. I've had a couple coaches text me. I got some visits set up for this weekend. I've also earned some stars and some rankings.
I wanted to, we'll get to the recruiting stuff here in a minute, but I wanted to take you backwards for a minute. Um, for those that aren't aware, obviously Big Brother's Caden Green, starting tackle at Missouri. What do you remember kind of from watching your brother's recruiting process? And I'm curious, like, as Caden started to pass down any like words of wisdom or advice for your process?
I definitely remember it was like his was a lot different from mine. His was a lot more chaotic. I had to shut off his phone because it was a lot of stuff going on. But he's definitely told me just go where you're most fit at. Don't really do it just for the money. Do it for because you love it.
No doubt. Um, I'm curious too, sticking kind of in the high school realm. What has it been like to have had to play? I guess you haven't yet, but come this fall, your third head coach in 3 years. Talk a little bit about that adjustment, what it's meant to you, what it's done for you, and the rest of the guys, at least some in North, particularly these seniors, to be this fall.
It's been like very chaotic and like feels like it's been something new every other year, and I feel like I haven't really got to really enjoy my high school football experience as well as most do. But I feel like it's just getting me ready for college because college is everywhere. Coaches are always moving and things are always happening. So
That's actually a really good way to look at it. I hadn't thought about that before, that, this is kind of how college is now. So in a way, it's kind of gotten you ready, maybe calloused you a little bit, in that regard. What is it? uh, Coach Cross comes in. Did you get to meet him, pretty early on? And what was your initial take knowing, hey, this guy's been at, you know, power four level and the NFL level?
the first time I met him was when he was introduced to the team. I didn't really know anything about him or know him before then, but I could tell that he was a college level coach and he was very intense, and I could tell he's been at high levels where I'm trying to go. And
Yeah, how is he different maybe from what you've had before, at least some in North, and like kind of what stands out about Coach Cross? You mentioned, he's a really focused, really stern kind of guy. But again, maybe like you said, somebody that could really help you in terms of getting you ready for the level that you want to play at.
one, he knows the game really well, like better than anybody I've ever been around. Like he knows everything about being a defensive player. And two, he doesn't lower his standard for anybody. His standard stays the same, no matter if you're an NFL, college, high school guy. If he thinks you can be really good, then his standard is the same. He's not gonna baby you. He's not gonna let you relax. It's hard all the time.
Not a head coach for Lee Summit North, but a guy that I know. I actually covered his recruitment, so I'm showing my age a little bit here. But a guy that I just think the world of, and I know you do too. The impact that assistant coach Elijah Lee has had on your personal growth, your physical transformation too. I really wanted to ask you about Elijah because it just feels like, I mean, look, to kind of peel back the curtain for a minute here, Caleb. I remember watching you at the K State camp, and I think you had just come off your freshman season, maybe at least some at North. Um, the player that I remember watching in linebacker drills there with Coach Stannard and the player that you are now, totally different. And I would imagine you would probably credit Elijah Lee with a lot of that transformation, right?
Yes, I actually thank God that a lot Coach Lee came into my life because it's like a big brother relationship. At the same time, it's hard work, but at the same time, he jokes with me and things like that. But he's helped me like grow a lot. Like I never would have imagined the numbers I had at that camp last week. You couldn't tell me that I would have had those numbers last year, even a couple months ago. And the work we put in, it's hard, but it's really paid off.
What's been the key to your physical transformation? Because you mentioned it. I mean, obviously, you've completely reshaped your body, but at the same time, you've gotten a lot more explosive, faster. You're covering sideline to sideline now. What's been kind of the key to your physical transformation?
Definitely a lot of stretching, but at the same time, being smarter with lifts, like not doing doing stuff that applies to football, like one-legged things and things that are gonna help me be really explosive.
Sure. Getting to recruiting now. Missouri offered in January. We've already mentioned it. That's where Caden is now. They're the in-state school for you. Walk us through kind of what that moment was like for you and your family to get the Missouri offer, an SEC scholarship opportunity.
It was it was really random. Like I didn't think Coach D Nick still remember who I was. I came out of my mom calls me out of school. She's like, "Come on." I'm like, what's going on? I'm in school, mom." And she takes me down to the weight room. I see Coach Cross. I say what's up to him. And then Coach D Nick pulls up and I'm like, what is he doing here? And then he comes and we talk, we sit down, and then he lets me know I have a scholarship and I was like, wow, like I didn't think that was gonna happen. That was crazy to me. Still
Was it
is.
was was there any like feeling or pressure to like, man, you know, big brother's there, like they're the in-state school, like might as well just go ahead and commit? Or have you looked at this more with an even keel, like, no, I need to let this process play out a little bit?
I actually just talked to my brother about this like maybe a couple days ago. I was like, I was ready to commit, but like they telling me to be patient, trust God, and let it play out because I still have like now, especially after this camp, like it's starting to take off a little bit. So they're telling me to just slow down and just trust the process because things are coming.
Well, you mentioned, you kind of alluded to it earlier, that you've gotten some coaches that are hitting you up now, some visits that are starting to take shape. Um, Tell the listeners out there about some of the other schools that are starting to get in touch with you, and some of those spring visits that you're starting to lock in.
Friday I have a visit to Iowa State. I've been talking to them pretty heavily, and then the next day I have a visit to Missouri State, and I have an OV set up to Liberty, and that's really about it right now. But definitely have a lot of coaches texting me, but those are like the visits that I have set up.
Sure. What separates you right now as a linebacker? And is there anybody, we love to ask on the show, is there anybody like at the college or pro level that you're starting to kind of model your game after? Do you ever find yourself going into old huddle and YouTube stuff looking at Elijah Lee? I mean, granted, he was playing D end at Blue Springs, but
Yeah,
maybe more his college or pro tape.
I've watched his college tape a few times. He was a hard hitter, but right now I feel like I watch a lot of Harold Perkins and
Hmm.
CJ Allen because I feel like we're around like the same size and things like that. So I feel like it's easier to model your game after somebody you're built like.
Sure. Something else we'd love to ask players when they come on the show is, obviously, folks now know your name. You're a recognizable recruit. Lee Summon North's got tons of recognizable recruits. It's a loaded senior class that's going to join you in the fall. But are there any fellow kind of Broncos that you're excited about this coming season? Guys that you're starting to see take that next step this offseason? Maybe they're seniors like you, maybe they're underclassmen, that folks listening to the show should start to maybe have their eyes on.
We got a bunch of DBs there, long, skinny, fast. We got one he was at the camp on Sunday. His name is Logan. Guy's 4'4", lengthy, 6'1". We got a guy named Elias. He's real lengthy. and super fast. We got a couple young guys that can play DB. Um, we got some young D linemen as well that are really good. Uh, One of them named Michael. He's a 2029. He played varsity as a freshman last year. I feel like he's gonna have a really good sophomore season, but we have a lot of young DBs that could play some college football.
Last but not least, how strong are the vibes going into this season, this 2026 season at Lee Summit North? I mean, obviously, you just watched crosstown rival win the state championship. You guys have been so close several times. Now you kind of have breathed in this new life with Coach Cross. I mean, what is the vibe around the program heading into your senior season?
It's different now. Like everything's completely different. Everybody's more locked in. I feel like it feels more like a family atmosphere. Um, guys aren't allowed to slack off anymore. You don't you don't get to bull crap around in the weight room. You don't get to bull crap around in the field. You're gonna hear from hear from coach, hear from all the coaches. It's different now.
Are you kind of taking a little bit more of a vocal role too?
I am. I didn't used to be a guy that talked a lot, but I feel like now I kind of have to. Like people look up to me, so I have to be able to be more vocal and be able to command, and not only that, but show it in my actions that what I say I mean it.
Well, we're looking forward to it. I know watching you and Lee Summit North this season and really throughout the rest of this offseason, excited to see where that recruitment goes as that process takes shape. So, Caleb, thanks again for joining us here on Verbal Commitment.
I appreciate it.
And folks, stick around for Fourth Down. I'll be back to talk about a hot button issue, hot topic floating around Topeka on the Kansas side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
And thanks again to Caleb Green for joining us this week. He's starting off a monster off season with the Missouri offer and now the MVP honors in St. Louis. Eager to see where that recruiting process continues to go as we start to head towards summer, if you can believe it or not. With that being said, have you subscribed to the KCSN Varsity channel yet? Only takes a second. Click that button below this video if you're watching on YouTube. Never miss another snap. And you can also keep track of all the things Verbal Commitment shares, both from our show and just from around the region in recruiting activity on X by following our account at verbalcommit_KC. For those listening on your favorite audio platform, don't forget to leave us a review or rating. Really helps us grow the show. And no matter where you choose to watch or listen, never hesitate to chime in with a comment or share our content. So again, we can connect with more folks just like you. Now, at the beginning of the show, I mentioned that Fourth Down is going to kind of be up in the air in terms of how we want to use it. This week, I wanted to shed some light on a pressing topic when it comes to politics and Kansas high school athletics. And this is going to be an area that we're not going to dive into very often on this show. I just don't like to talk politics. But again, it's a very hot button issue right now. And it comes in the form of Senate Bill 515, or what was Senate Bill 515. More on that in a moment. But basically, what it is this was a bill that was brought on to kind of help with trying to give folks, mainly homeschool students, the ability to participate in CASHA, like accredited private institutions, allow them to participate in athletics activities. And what ended up taking place when it was on the floor in Topeka is it ends up that there was an amendment that was slid in by the Senate Majority Leader that basically was a push to have this memoriam put in that would take away the ability for high school coaches, high school players to have practices. And again, this also involves activities. So things like the arts and theater, drama, you think about debate, orchestra, band, in addition to athletics. This kind of quiet period that would take place for every Sunday during the year, as well as all Wednesday nights from like 6 p.m. to midnight, You wouldn't be able to have practice. Coaches wouldn't be able to go off campus to do any sort of practice or training sessions with kids. It would eliminate that altogether, as well as have these windows around Christmas and around Easter and a week window around the 4th of July that also would be hands off. Nothing would be able to be happened. And this again would be coming from Topeka in a bill by law. Well, what ends up happening, to cut to the chase this week, because again, this created obviously a lot of talking amongst coaches, amongst fans, folks for it, folks against it. The Kansas legislature's negotiators on education bills, that's a group, ended up deleting the Senate approved change because, again, this passed in the Senate. It was headed to the House. And then this group, the negotiators on education bills, ends up deleting the approved change. And I wanted to kind of take a note from the Kansas Reflector's Tim Carpenter. This was from an excerpt from some reporting that he did earlier this week. The House Senate Conference Committee bundled what was a stripped down Senate Bill 515 into this new Senate bill, and ended up where they took out the amendment. So the memoriam is now off the table. Now, even if lawmakers don't ultimately pass a law in this session, the KSHA Board of Directors could still act upon this idea next month when they meet. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because regardless of what side of the line you fall on, this has created stirred up some controversy. Again, for now, in the bill that it was in, it's been stripped out. Doesn't look like it's going to, pass in legislature terms, but it is something now that I could see getting brought to the board of directors at KSHA. And it's something that's going to continue to be talked about, is whether or not it's healthy, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, to allow for, in purposes of this show, student athletes more time off, away from sports. Are we giving our student athletes not enough time with their families, not enough time to do some things away from the sports? Or are those in charge, those in power, maybe trying to assert themselves too much? I don't know. Leave us a comment, talk to us about it, because again, I think that this won't be the last time that we hear this topic. I feel like this is maybe only the start of this type of conversation. So we'll see where things go from here. Again, to catch you up, it wasn't a bill. It was an amendment. They've stripped it out. It's not, but it might not be off the table when it comes to KSHA and the board of directors here when they get together next month. So that wraps up this show. Again, to all the coaches and players, parents and fans, thanks for tuning in, showing your support as always. And until next time, I think the line goes something like this: we'll see you on the trail, and take care.